Deep Space Nine is a fan favorite show amongst superfans of the Star Trek universe. It's beloved for its unique cast of characters, its emphasis on family and redemption, and its fearless analysis of the effects of war on all parties involved. It's been decades since the last episode aired, and I am finally ready to go through the series for the very first time. Join me as I share my most and least favorite episodes, character highlights, and honest reactions to this epic show. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things Star Trek. And today we are continuing my journey through Deep Space Nine for the first time ever with a review of Season 5. Now, in all the previous seasons, there were some episodes that were really great and some episodes that were not so great. In Season 5, I can legitimately say that I liked every episode. Now, I like some episodes better than others, but there were none that really stood out to me as episodes that I despise, or episodes that I'm like, oh, this is so lame, or this is so stupid. I didn't really feel like that for scenes, sure, but for whole episodes, I didn't really feel like that. So, for my review of Season 5, I'm just going to talk about my 10 favorite episodes, which is basically almost half of the entire season because there's 26 episodes per season. So the first 5 are episodes that I liked. You know, maybe your favorites on here, maybe not. And then the second 5 are episodes that I absolutely loved. So if you had a favorite episode of Season 5 of Deep Space Nine, definitely let me know in the comments what is the name of the episode and why do you love it. Now, for everybody who is watching live, hello and welcome. For everyone who's watching on the replay, there are timestamps below so you can jump ahead at any time. So without further ado, let's get started with the first episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 6, Trials and Tribble-ations. Sisko and crew are sent back in time to the era of Captain Kirk after a temporal accident. They must stop a Klingon agent who is trying to assassinate Kirk. The crew blends in aboard the Enterprise while ensuring history remains mostly unchanged. So, like I said, these first few episodes are not my favorite. Like, I like them, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I love this. However, this episode had to go on the list, and here's why. So I'm not a big TOS person. I've seen a handful of episodes, but I love the fact that this is not only an homage to TOS, but it's actually integrated into the episode. So before I watched Trials and Tribble-ations, I went back and watched that episode in TOS. What was it called? Whatever the episode was called in TOS. I went back and watched it because I was like, I want to make sure I know what's going on. Like, I don't want to miss anything. I want to catch all the Easter eggs. Turns out I sort of didn't need to do that because this entire episode is that entire episode. It's just kind of like what was happening on the other side of the hallway, or what was happening in the room you couldn't see, what was happening, slightly to the left of the camera. And I love that. That's pretty genius. That's super fun. You got to do this just like with a little bit at a time. If they did this every single season, it would get exhausting, similar to doing Mirror Universe every single season. But it was so fun. I kind of wish every Star Trek show after TOS had an episode like this, where they took an episode of a different Trek show and they just showed like the behind the scenes or like the outtakes or something. I think that'd be really fun if we got like in Voyager, if we got a clip of DS9 or TNG, and then maybe not Picard because Picard was kind of a bummer, but in one of the other shows, like we got some kind of throwback. That'd be kind of fun. Or like a Lower Decks where they go back in time and they relive a Voyager episode. I think that'd be super fun. Anyways, that being said, this has to make the list for just how iconic both episodes are. Obviously, the Tribble episode is a big deal, but then to see them not just reimagine it, but just kind of like relive it, and to see the cast of DS9 wearing the old uniforms and the old outfits, and seeing the way the Klingons looked, which was really weird for me. I think the whole thing was really fun. And I think, let me know if I'm wrong, because you guys, a lot of you are more up on this Trek knowledge than I am. Wasn't it the exact same actor? Like the older actor who went back the older actor who was a Klingon who went back in time to assassinate Kirk so that he would not be exposed as a Klingon, something. Wasn't that the exact same actor? But it was like, 30 years later or whatever. So now he's an older gentleman. That was kind of cool. I think it was the same guy. It looked like the same guy from the little glimpses I saw. That's a really nice touch. Stuff like that you just gotta love. So yes, for all those reasons, this episode went on the list. I mean, they didn't really add anything to the narrative, right? It was more just like cosplaying as TOS, and I'm here for that. So yes, I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. Oh, it was the same actor? Okay, that's what I thought. And I just think that's Garvin. That was his name. What a nice touch. Like, oh, I think it was Josh who said those 3 Klingons in that Jadzia episode, Blood Oath, I think it was season 2 maybe, said that those were the same Klingons from TOS as well. That's just a really nice touch. Like, that's the kind of thing they don't have to do. They could have just got some guy. They could have just said there's some guy, but they actually got the actor. And even though Garvin was only in 2 scenes, I think like older Garvin was only in 2 scenes of this whole episode, and young Garvin was only in 1 scene. I'm so happy they did that, right? Like, I appreciate that as just a viewer, that little touch. Okay, let's see. Some will say, let he who is without sin is the worst episode of them all. I dig it just for the message that speaks to today. Yeah, so that episode originally was on like my low list back when I had a low list. And then I was like, but is it low? No, I agree with you. I think that there's a message in there that is important to hear. I think the way they went about it was dumb, but that's the episode, right? The way they went about it is like, we're going to teach you, we're going to tell you that you guys are too soft. That's why the Dominion's going to win. He's not totally wrong, but I don't think the Dominion would win because Federation is too soft and like they're bad for liking pleasure. And if only they didn't like pleasure, they'd be tough and more able to win in a battle. I think that argument is flawed, but I just think the Dominion is so overpowered. They should have won. With the best that Starfleet has to offer, you can't compete against changelings. You can't compete against Jem'Hadar, who are genetically created to go to war, and they say victory is life, and they will suicide bomb anybody, anytime. They just seem pretty unbeatable. And the Vorta, even though this only happened 1 time, have some kind of like telekinetic abilities where they can just throw people with their minds. That's pretty cool too. And I don't know of any other Alpha Quadrant species who are in the Federation that can do that. There might be some, and I'm just not remembering, but I can't think of any that can do that. So for just those 3, and I'm assuming the Dominion has many other species under its thumb, and perhaps many other species that have been genetically created for its purposes. So that's why I think they just should have won outright, but not because the Federation's too soft. And how dare they like Risa? How dare they go on vacations? That's the only reason they're going to lose a war. I think that argument's a little flawed. Okay. Yes. Tribble's classic, great episode. And you know it's a good one when they bring it back again and again and again. We see Tribbles again in Prodigy. I think they show up again in Enterprise, though I have not seen Enterprise, but I think I saw that in my research at one point. That is one of the best episodes of TNG era Trek ever. The love and care they show for TOS was felt throughout every scene. Yeah, this episode from DS9, yeah, I agree with you. There was definitely an extreme attention to detail in Trials and Tribble-ations. Even the outfit that the waitress was wearing, like just the kinds of equipment they were carrying. Bashir was carrying that old school medical tricorder thing that looks like a big old backpack. Like those little things, it definitely was a love letter. I agree. In the cards, love the friendship between Jake and Nog. I do too. And just Nog's journey is such a heartbreaking journey, but such a real one. It's like the most human journey of everybody else to see what he goes through. In the cards has some of the lowest stakes of any DS9 episode, and it really works. Yeah, because the stakes are more internal, right? It's not like, we got to get this virus over to planet XYZ or else they'll all die. Like, it's not that. That's not what the episode's about. It's a very human story. It's a very personal story, and it's a story of just trauma and recovery without any extra space battles. And it's just done really well because the actors are brilliant and the writers were amazing, and it all came together so perfectly. Because you could have an episode like this that's a real dud, right? But that was done beautifully. I would agree with the comment, let he who is without sin. I would have skipped it, but then I turned on the news. Yep. And you're like, oh, well, this does apply. I love this episode. My intro to Star Trek was the original series, which is a lot of people, Patty. I watched it with my mom when I was 9, and I definitely remember this episode at the time. If I had watched TOS as a kid, this episode, the Tribbles one, would have definitely been one that stood out in my imagination, especially with how cute and furry they are and how they kind of like purr and stuff. I would have wanted one for sure. I would have been like, I want a Tribble. I mean, maybe not like the self-multiplying crazy, take over your whole house Tribble, but a little Tribble pet, a little soft Tribble ball that I could like cuddle up with, I would have absolutely, like, this would have worked on me. This merch play right here would have 100% worked on me. Jim, this man is a Klingon. We do not speak of them. I had big questions on that. So glad you finished DS9. I will no longer be the spoiler police yelling at everyone in the chat who dares hint at a spoiler. I know. Because it's so hard too. And people didn't know that I hadn't seen the show. So they would just jump in and be like, you know, spoiler. And you'd be like, no, don't do it. Oh, by the way, if you're watching on your TV and you want to jump in the chat, you can always open up the app on your phone and you can chat on your phone if you don't want to pull out your computer. Okay, let's move on to the next episode on the list. Season 5, Episode 16, Dr. Bashir, I presume. Dr. Louis Zimmerman arrives on Deep Space Nine to create a holographic model of Bashir. During the process, Bashir's parents arrive, and it's revealed that he was genetically enhanced as a child. This secret threatens his medical career and his parents' freedom. So I actually really like this episode. It's not like terribly exciting. It's a little bit like in the cards in the sense that it's one note. There's no space battles or anything like that. It's a very human, personal story. And I already knew that Bashir was an augment because spoilers, right? So I already knew that. But had I not known that, I would have been like, what? This is crazy. But what I really liked about this episode, a couple things. Seeing Dr. Zimmerman, I did not know Dr. Zimmerman existed outside of Voyager. That was fun, especially for a Voyager fan. Thinking that they were going to make the next EMH of Bashir, I kind of love that. What a fun idea that it's like, oh, we want you to be the next model because Zimmerman realizes that his narcissistic ways are not maybe the most helpful. So I think that was kind of fun. It was really hard for me to watch all the scenes with Bashir and his parents because he was just so disrespectful to his dad and there was just so much tension and it just felt really icky. And then when Bashir had asked Zimmerman, like, please do not involve my parents in this. Like, this is my one request. You get to invade every part of my life and privacy in order to create this super realistic hologram. But all I'm asking is please don't include my parents. And then Zimmerman's like, agreed. And the second he walks out, he's like, contact parents immediately and bring them to the station. He could have low-key sent them a survey. You know, he could have sent them a deep space message, but no, he brought them to the station to personally interview them. He went that extra mile to say, screw you, Dr. Bashir, which I feel like was unnecessary, but added an interesting twist. But yeah, it was hard watching all the scenes with Bashir and his parents and all their conflict and tension. But then when the truth comes out and the parents tell the Bashir hologram, like, oh, we're not going to tell the secret that you're really enhanced person or whatever. I was like, oh. And you see Zimmerman and O'Brien come around the corner, like, what? I like that part. And then I like how accepting all of Bashir's friends were. Like, I like how O'Brien was like, hey, that explains it, you know? And it was just, I don't know, they just kind of accepted him and they had questions, but it wasn't the reaction that La'an gave to Una in Strange New Worlds. When she was like, augment, they used to call me an augment. They should have called you an augment, right? Because, I mean, granted, these are different people with different hangups, but they didn't do that to Bashir. They didn't criticize him, ostracize him, throw him in a corner, whatever. All his friends were just like, wow, I didn't know that about you. And then it was very much like, what do we do moving forward? It was very professional, I feel like, in the way that Sisko et al. Were like, okay, what do we do now? And for Bashir's dad to be like, send me to prison. It was illegal, so just send me to prison, couple years, let my son keep his whatevers. And that Starfleet was like, sounds good. I feel like it was really light, especially if this is supposed to be some egregious crime. I feel like that was a really light sentence. And when Bashir at the end was like, isn't that a little harsh? I was like, isn't it not though? Aren't they doing like a bunch of special favors for you because you're really good or something? Or because, I'm not really sure, but I feel like they were doing special favors because they could have easily made him an example and they did not. So that's what I have to say about this episode. I liked it. I liked hearing the truth about Bashir. Also, I liked how from this point on, he starts doing all these superhuman things. And he's like, well, I don't have to hide that I'm enhanced anymore. So here's what I can really do. And he's like, I can do calculations in my head. Like, basically, they unlock this ability for this character to have new superpowers that he didn't have before. But they made a really logical progression, a logical explanation for why he would have these abilities. And I totally buy it. And I just love the world building of that. and part of that long form storytelling that Deep Space Nine is so good at. Anyways, okay, I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode on the list. Ooh, we're checking through. Hello. Oh, I love this. I want a neutered Tribble. They sound even cuter than guinea pigs. They really do. I just wouldn't trust that it was really neutered. You know what I mean? I would just have this fear that it's going to invade the entire ecosystem and devour everything. If it was a real Tribble. Maybe if it was in that creepy, oh, you haven't seen this. You haven't seen Lower Decks, right, Nadia? There's this it's not a zoo. What do they call this? A menagerie of dangerous creatures. And it'd be kind of cool if they had a petting zoo part of that had some Tribbles that you could just like play with and touch and cuddle, and they can just like live their best life without destroying whole planets. This is an interesting episode, a big turn to the evolution of Bashir's character. Yeah, I feel like genetically enhanced Bashir is, he seems a little less, he's not less cocky, because season 1 Bashir is very cocky, but he seems more grounded, more mature, maybe? I don't know, that's how he seemed to play to me from season 5 on. He seemed more mature. Bob Picardo working on the title for most series played in. Right? Can he beat Jeffrey Combs, though? The cat is let out of the bag on this episode. Also, lots of interesting backstory about Bashir's parents. Yes, yes. Is he Babu from Seinfeld? Oh, that's where I recognize him from. Yes. Love all the backstory details. You're a very good man, Jerry. I totally recognized him from something and I couldn't place it. But I watched so much TV, it could have been anything. It was Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, it was Seinfeld of all things. Yes. Oh, this was sad. Yes. Okay. There was an episode when he had that international restaurant and Jerry convinced him to turn it into a pure Indian food. And Jerry missed the immigration hearing and Babu got deported. And didn't his like restaurant tank because Jerry's suggestion was awful? Like, didn't that happen? Or am I misremembering that? If you don't hit the like button, Zimmerman will call your parents. That's funny. Done hitting the like button. I love that. Oh, by the way, everybody who's in the away team, love to see you here. Drop a : in the chat, or a : Borg : so I can see that you're here. I am new here, but loving your energy. It's nice to see other female fans. Woo! Hi, Karen. Nice to have you here. We got a few other female fans in the chat. AF Kaplan asked Nadia, can you neuter a Tribble? We don't know. I feel like every experiment, at least according to my research, every experiment that's been done on Tribbles to try to control Tribbles in any way has led to creating even more superpowered Tribbles. So something tells me that if you tried to neuter one, you would make them have even more explosive propagation. Like you would get a million times more than you normally would get. Okay, yeah. So they did have them in, they had them in TAS, more Tribbles, more trouble. They also had them in Enterprise, right? I'm not making that up. Bashir seems more comfortable in his own skin after this episode. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe more than mature. Maybe he seems more comfortable in his own skin, less like insecure, maybe. They probably let Julian get away with the genetic engineering because despite his advantages, he still mistook the ganglionic nerve fiber or something, like whatever that thing he's always talking about. So there's that episode. I don't remember which season it is. Loving seeing the colons. There was that episode where he actually met the lady, the woman who one-upped him on that medical school exam, and she didn't even recognize him because she thought he was bullying or something. And he's like got all this stuff in his head, and he's like, okay, here it goes. And she's in Quarks, and he stands up to greet her, and she walks right past him, and he's like, I can't believe she doesn't even know who I am. She doesn't remember me. That was funny. Yes, PS2 Chipper has gifted 10 memberships to the channel. So if you're not a member, you can grab one of those. They are first come, first serve. You could do, like I said, hop on your phone, grab one of those, and then you can drop a : or Borg : in the chats. So we know that you're here. Thank you so much, PS2 Chipper. Okay, let's go to
the next episode on the list. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Season 5, Episode 23, Blaze of Glory. Sisko brings former Maquis leader Michael Eddington out of a prison to help him stop a missile attack against Cardassia. Together, they track down the launch site and attempt to intercept the warheads. But turns out there was nothing to worry about. Eddington was really tricking Sisko in order to save what was left of his Maquis friends and family members.
So I like this episode for several reasons. One reason I liked it is I finally got closure on what happened with the Maquis. So for those of you who don't know, I watched TNG and then I went straight to Voyager. So I had not seen Deep Space Nine until now, until I was this year's old, where I've now watched all of it. Oh, a Moopsie. Okay, that's kind of cute too. Yeah, where I've now watched all of it. And so I remember in Voyager, there's 2 episodes. One, I think it's called Extreme Risk. The one where B'Elanna's like trying to un-B'Elanna herself because all the Maquis have died. And then there is the episode Bliss with the telepathic picture plant, where they're trying to wake B'Elanna up in sickbay, and she wakes up and she's hallucinating. And she's like, the Maquis, they're here, they're all here. And she's like, my friends, I thought you guys had died. I'm so glad to see you're alive. Da, 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 da. And so that was enough to tell me that the Maquis all died. I had no idea the Maquis existed at all in Deep Space Nine. So it wasn't until me watching it, and then I saw kind of the beginning of the Maquis. I mean, they talked about it in Journey's End. I think it's called Journey's End, TNG, the TNG episode in season 9. So they talked about the Maquis back there. So they were already introduced. So for me, I was like, oh yeah, we heard about them in TNG, and now we're hearing about them in Voyager. But then to see kind of more backstory about what happens with the Maquis in Deep Space Nine was so satisfying. And then to find out that Eddington, of all people, was the leader of the Maquis, that was a surprise twist. And then in this episode, we get like the closure of his story, but we also see why the Maquis were all destroyed. Because in my mind, seeing that in Voyager, I was like, oh, they must have all been destroyed by the Cardassians. Like they were tracked down and that's what happened. But then it's like, no, it was the Dominion. And I'm like, okay, that makes more sense because the Dominion is just so ruthless, right? So I liked getting the backstory on that, getting closure on that. I liked having the end of Eddington's story. I liked when he... I don't know. I like the antagonism between him and Sisko in the sense that you had to see them work together without liking each other. And it shows us a different part of Sisko that we don't usually see because he's not usually working with people he despises, right? So that was nice. It was just nice to see how else Sisko could feel in a given situation. And then I liked that we got to see, phaser fights with the Jem'Hadar. It's always a good time. This is another reason why the Jem'Hadar should win. In the clip I just played, you saw that they do that camouflage thing, right? Where they're like invisible and then they like become visible just to attack, which I feel like is not necessary. I think they could shoot their weapons while still being invisible. This is another reason why they should win, why they should easily win the war, because they can cloak their whole bodies and attack you without you even knowing where they are or being able to defend yourself. There's no reason why they should ever just be standing there. Like in this scene, they're standing cloaked with their weapons and they're just like waiting for Sisko to take aim and start firing, laying down shots. And then that didn't make any sense. Like if they're already cloaked, they should have attacked them whatever. That's beside the point. But yes, for all those reasons, I liked it. I like that Eddington tricked Sisko into helping him find the last of the Maquis who were still alive and kind of rescue them. Because had Eddington been like, hey, the last of the Maquis are trapped, and he didn't know this. He didn't know the Jem'Hadar were there. But if he was like, hey, they're trapped and the Jem'Hadar are there, can you go help them? Sisko would be like, no. That's what you get for being Maquis. You know what I mean? So he kind of needed to do what he needed to do in order to save them. So for all those reasons, I like this episode. Yeah. And I'll check the chat and then we can go to the next episode on the list. So I can hurry up and get to the episodes that I love. He betrayed his uniform. I love the idea. I'm loving this Borg : and the : colons. I agree. Having a : Tribble : is a pretty cute idea. And having a Moopsie is also a pretty cute idea. I think I only get like 5 though. So I'm just going to have to, because what you guys don't know is I have an Orion, an Andorian. I actually have a Klingon, but I took it off because you couldn't tell it was Klingon. I have a Vulcan. So I'm taking all those off and put the really cute things there. Freaking Eddington. He was so pretentious. His whole Les Mis thing is beyond annoying. He was so pretentious. And when he was undercover, he was all like, I follow the law. I'm all about the letter of the law. And then when he's the head of the Maquis, he's all like, oh, law schma. It's like, pick a lane, dude. Pick a lane. Hold on, crime. He betrayed his uniform. Yes, he did. You have not tasted tomatoes until you've had naturally grown tomatoes. Ooh, I don't know what conversation that is, but I don't even like tomatoes, but I probably would like naturally grown tomatoes. I'm glad I was not the only one who felt that way about Eddington. What a tool. Yes. Eddington was annoying when he was the good guy and annoying when he was the bad guy. There's like no version of Eddington that was not annoying. But I think that's a really well-written character, a character that makes you feel something, even if that something is like frustration or annoyance or disgust or whatever. That tells me he was really well written, because if you think about it, I only remember Eddington in a handful of episodes, like 5 or 6 episodes, but I have a strong reaction to that character. So that was a very well written character, in my opinion. Also, I didn't like how Eddington pronounced things in French, but I may be biased snob. Yeah, that's probably because you actually speak French, and most likely the actor who played Eddington did not. Okay, let's go to the next episode on the list.
Season 5, Episode 24, Empok Nor. Chief O'Brien leads a salvage mission to the abandoned Cardassian station Empok Nor. Once there, Cardassian soldiers who were in stasis awaken and begin to hunt down the crew one by one. The team fights for survival when Garak himself is turned against them, leaving only O'Brien and Nog to fight for their lives.
I really like this one. This was I'm saying this for all the ones that I really liked, right? I really like this one. I thought it was very scary. It was obviously I want to say their Halloween episode, but they don't necessarily do a scary episode during Halloween. But you know what I mean? It was like their ghost ship episode. There's always an episode like this, or a couple of episodes like this in all the Star Treks. And this one was creepy. It was eerie. It was shot very well, like very beautifully, in the way that even in the beginning when they get to Empok Nor, they're Garak's like walking around the station, and there's this pan, and then it goes to sickbay, and then it shows those two Cardassians who are in stasis tubes, and it shows like I think maybe the panel says activated or something like that, where you're like, who are those people? What's going on? What's happening? And then it's like, next scene, and then it shows the people like, all right, everybody, we're going to split up in teams of 2. Let's go get these pieces that we need so we can fix stuff on Deep Space Nine. So they all split up, and then the way that each person is being taken out like one by one by one, you're like, what the heck is going on? And then when Garak's like, oh, there's these other Cardassians moving around the station, I'm going to take care of them, and he's like goes to work, and you're like, oh great, Garak's on our side, he's saving us. And then he just like knifes that guy in the back or whatever, or maybe in the chest, wherever he knifes that guy, and you're like, oh no, Garak's the bad guy. It's just, I don't know, this episode was really creepy. It was really well done. I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. I did not know the entire away team was going to be gotten, with the exception of O'Brien and Nog. Like, I did not know that. I saw that the Cardassians were waking up. They seemed pretty aggressive, and I was like, okay. And I thought it was going to be some kind of battle. Maybe they were going to try to barricade themselves somewhere or something like that. But when they started getting picked off one by one, I was like, how many of them are going to be picked off? All of them? Wow. I did not see that coming. And then in the end, I don't think I put this part in the clip, but in the end, Garak is in sickbay because O'Brien made his phaser, did something. He did some kind of MacGyver stunt where I think his phaser exploded or something like that. And Garak was walking towards it when it blew up. And so in the end, and then they like fixed his brain because he had some chemical imbalance that was making him go all crazy. So anyways, they fixed his brain, and he's laying in sickbay, and O'Brien comes to see him. And Garak's like, well, and O'Brien's like, you don't even have to say anything. We can decide what goes into the report later. We don't have to put all the things in the report, And Garak has this thing where, O'Brien says like, oh, I heard that you broke a couple ribs, blah, 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 with that explosion. And Garak's like, yeah, I was pretty lucky. Had I been any closer, Dr. Bashir says I would have died. And O'Brien says, don't take this the wrong way, but that was the idea. So they were in a legit life and death situation. And I love seeing G.I. O'Brien. Like, I love seeing when he comes out and he's got all these battle skills that, were not present at all in TNG. he was just a transporter tech. Here, he's got this really rich backstory, and I love seeing that. And there is an episode, like, I don't remember, maybe the next season, where Garrick and Nog are on an away mission on a planet going somewhere. And I think it's the one where Nog gets shot. They're walking on a planet going somewhere. And Nog is like scanning, but he's making sure he stands behind Garrick at all times. Like, he does not let Garrick get behind him. And Garrick's like, what are you doing? He's like, stop that. And Nog's like, what are you talking about? Garrick's like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You are making sure to walk behind me at all times. Is this because that little thing that happened at Empok Nor? The little thing being when he kidnapped him, tied him up, and held him at gunpoint until O'Brien came out to fight. And he's like, I told you I apologize for that. And Nog is like, apology-ishmology. Like, no, you're going to walk in front of me. That's all I know for sure. I don't know. I just love that. I love everything about that. So yeah, I think this was a really good episode. It was really scary. Like, it is what nightmares are made of. And I think it was so scary because it was very real. You know, it wasn't ghosts. It wasn't aliens. It wasn't, you know, it was just people when they lose their freaking mind. It was like The Shining, which did have ghosts. But it was like that, when people just lose their mind and start acting crazy. Anyways, okay. I'm going to check the chat, and then we'll go to the next episode on the list, which is the 5th episode. And it's the last of my, I really like this episode. And then after that, it's going to be like, I love this episode. Okay. Yes, love seeing the Borg. Okay. Eddington and Cisco had some dry dialogue about why he portrayed Starfleet, and part of the convo was natural grown tomatoes. Oh my gosh, that's what you're talking about. Yes, I totally forgot about that. He was talking about replicated. Yes, you're totally right. Where he was like, it tastes replicated, it tastes fake. I am so curious about what replicated food tastes like. Like, I would love to do a taste test. And we do have something sort of like that now, because 3D printers can 3D print food. But it's not like they can 3D print a burger, but they can take proteins, fats, carbs, and like 3D print an edible item. But I'm super curious, like, to taste a tomato, a naturally grown tomato and a replicated tomato, and see if I could taste the difference, because sometimes on DS9 they're all like, ugh, you know, they can tell. I'm just curious. I'm curious if that's a thing. Yeah, accent coaches. Oh, now this was 1990 something. They didn't do accent coaches. They did not do that back then. But I agree with you. They should have. I liked Eddington, even though he was a traitor. Ooh, somebody who actually liked Eddington. What did you like about him? Did you think he was a good character, or did you actually like him as a person? No judgment, just curious. Because I think he was a great character, but I don't think we would be friends. Either him towing the line, we would not be friends, or him as a Maquis, either way. Fun episode. Garrick is flippin' freaky scary. 100%. Abandoned space station episodes. They never disappoint. You're right about that. It's either abandoned ships or abandoned space stations. They're always creepy. And they're always good episodes, even if they're thin, because the whole episode is just like, what's going on? And that's kind of good enough to keep our attention and imaginations going. Empok Nor gives us a glimpse of how terrifying Garrick must have been in his prime. Yeah, and I also feel like Garrick is so subtle, right? He's like, oh, I used to be a gardener. I'm just a simple tailor. So we don't see a lot of this side of him, even in his reflections of his own life. He makes himself seem like he was the kind of a spy who didn't get his hands dirty. But something like this episode shows you Garrick got his hands dirty like crazy. Because there was that other episode when wasn't it when Quark was going to die? And he was like, Garrick, I want you to kill me, but I want you to do it in a way that's a surprise, so that I don't see it coming or whatever. And Garrick had a whole list of ways. He was like, we could do poison, we could do choking, we could do like, he had all these ways of like, how do you want it to happen? Because I've got a repertoire. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Not sure if this or The Wire is Andrew Robinson's best performance. Who's Andrew Robinson? Who is that? Who is that character? Hello. O'Brien plus Cisco are my two choices for a team if ever I have to duke it out with anyone else, or if ever I have to face a crowd of J6ers. O'Brien and Cisco. My team if I have to duke it out. Are you saying of just Deep Space Nine, or are you saying of life? Because if I had two people from Deep Space Nine, I would pick O'Brien and Kira. Yeah, that's who I would pick for fighting. And then if I had a third pick, I'd pick Bashir just to save our lives if anybody gets hurt from the fighting. Okay. I just had an image in my head of Garrick running around Empok Nor yelling, red rum, red rum. And Garrick is all like, all work and no play, right? Also elements of Event Horizon, but a lot less graphically violent, of course. Yes, well, Event Horizon to me is like all scary things put together in one smorgasbord of a movie. So yeah, if you pick any scary space station, scary ship, person who's lost their freaking mind, also supernatural elements, because Event Horizon had the time travel, universe hopping, whatever was going on in that movie. Yes, it's got like all the scary things. Do you remember that scene where it was just like blood, but it was frozen in the vacuum of space, and then like they had gravity and then just splashed everywhere? Whew, that is also what nightmares are made of, that whole thing. Replicated food tastes like a food when you have COVID. Charisse is describing the next version of the Coke Pepsi challenge, but with replicated versus real tomatoes. I bet you I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Oh, okay, you liked him as a person. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. You liked him as a person. Hey, remember The Naked Now was an abandoned ship episode? Oh yeah. Okay, well, I have to take back what I said about how all the abandoned ship episodes are amazing, because that one was hilarious, but it was not amazing, and it wasn't really funny, because I don't think it was. I mean, it wasn't really scary, because it wasn't supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be kind of ridiculous. Oh, okay, that's Garrick. Oh, J6ers are January 6ers. Thank you for giving me all the lexicon definitions in here. Garrick, I feel like Garrick and the actor who plays Quark, whose name I also don't know, those two actors are like genius. Like everything they do is perfection. And I thought this from the pilot episode. The actor who plays Quark, there was a scene, I think he was just maybe in the bar just making drinks. I don't know what he was doing. But I was like, how am I understanding all of his emotions through 3 layers of prosthetics, right? He's got prosthetics and makeup and nail polish and just all these things. And I could tell all of his emotions, which usually you need to be able to see like your eyebrows and your cheek muscle. You usually need to see a lot of things in someone's body to read their body language. But he was so expressive and so emotive. Quark feels like the realest person to me on the show. Like, this is a real person. And Garrick, oh my gosh, like everything they do, everything they say is just perfection. I feel like you could not write something wrong for them. So I couldn't even pick a best scene or a best episode or anything, because even in the smallest, most insignificant scenes, the two of them are spectacular. That's just my opinion. And I don't feel like that about almost anybody in TV, like, or in movies. They have good moments and bad moments, or sorts of scenes that they're really good at, and other sorts, like maybe they're not really good with anger scenes. Maybe they're not good with crying or something like that. But man, Garrick and freaking Quark, whatever emotions they're showing me, I buy it. Like, I have not seen a scene with one of them that I think is bad in all of Deep Space Nine. So yeah, throwing it out there. My team for fighting in life. Oh yeah, Kira. I want her on my team too. And Ro. Yeah, I think I'd pick Kira over Ro, because Kira seems like more of a team player. Event Horizon is the precursor to Dead Space. I don't know what Dead Space is, but it sounds like something I wouldn't like. Not Event Horizon, scariest movie ever. Give me a Freddy movie or over Event Horizon any day. Seriously, Freddy or Jason, or both. Both over Event Horizon for sure. I had forgotten that scene in Event Horizon. Thanks for that. You're welcome. With the time difference, I actually have to go. All right, bye. Enjoy your nightmares. Okay, Armin Shimmerman. Okay, that's the actor's name. He's amazing. Like, so good. So good. Have y'all no, I have not. Okay, the Delta Flyers podcast has Armin Shimmerman is the consummate professional. He's also super smart. And he said that the actors in prosthetics had to overact to get their emotions across. Yes, okay, Sela's listening to Delta Flyers, which is really cool. I haven't listened to it since season 1. Yeah, so that's the thing about Armin Shimmerman. And I think, I mean, he it's not just that I don't feel like he overacts though, even though he's saying that. I feel like he acts with his whole body, because overacting can be like corny or cheesy or not believable. And that's not the case at all. He's very believable, extremely real. And then I'm also thinking about Jeffrey Combs, who was Wei Yun and Brunt, right? And Wei Yun is so reserved in all of his acting, right? He's very like just everything's kind of kept inside, but again, beautifully done, perfectly executed. Okay. Anyways, enough about this. Let me go into the next episode on the list.
Season 5, Episode 20, Ferengi Love Songs. Quark returns home to discover his mother Ishka is romantically involved with Grand Nagus Zek. He fears this relationship will harm Ferengi society and his own fortunes. In a misguided attempt to put things right, Quark joins forces with Liquidator Brunt, FCA, and of course makes everything so much worse.
So, usually the Ferengi episodes are kind of just buffoonery that I don't love. It's a good palate cleanser between all the heavy wartime stuff that's going on in Deep Space Nine. But this episode, I legitimately enjoyed. I enjoyed every part of it. Seeing Zek in the closet was hilarious. Seeing Brunt in the closet was hilarious. Having Ishka be like, oh, I don't know why he's here. I don't know. All of that was just fun. I like that character a lot. Quark's mom is really great. And then seeing that Quark's mom was pushing through all these reforms by whispering in Zek's ear was just really interesting to see how that affected the whole Ferengi society. I thought that was interesting. And then to see Brunt totally pull one over on Quark to be like, oh, you see what she's doing? This is bad for all of us. This is bad for you. Da, da, da. And so he breaks them up. And then Brunt's like, great, now I'm going to be the new Grand Nagus. And Quark's like, no. I like that. I don't know. Like I said, usually the Ferengi episodes are not my favorite, but this one I really enjoyed. I like the characters. I like the story. It was a nice breath of fresh air between all the kind of heavier episodes. And it was just really fun to watch. And I think all the actors in it were awesome. So high five on that. Okay, I'm going to check the chat. I didn't have much to say about that. The episode is what it is. I'm going to check the chat and then go to the next episode on the list, which is now getting into the episodes I freaking loved. Let's see. Love some Delta Flyers. Okay. Yep, I listen to Delta Flyers, which is so good, but my absolute favorite is Star Trek The Next Conversation. 5 stars all the way, and it's absolutely hysterical. So if you guys are looking for podcast recommendations, check out the Delta Flyers, Star Trek The Next Conversation, and the TNG podcast, which is my podcast with me and one of my best friends. That's a better way of saying it. They have to work harder at acting to get their emotions across. Yeah, and I mean, he killed it. He did such a good job. I like Quark's mom. I like how Quark's mom stands up for herself and refuses to be subordinate or submissive. I love that too. And I love that she's just really stubborn. She's just like, no, I'm not doing that. They're like, why are you wearing clothes? Because I want to. She's just very much like, I'm doing what I want to do. And you would think, especially the way Liquidator Brunt came down so hard on her and on Quark for her non-Ferengi-like behavior, you would think that Zek would be horrified by it, but he's not. He's totally intoxicated by her. And so understandable, right? Because she's a presence. She's a force. And I kind of love that. And I also think it's funny that she clearly loves Rom more than she loves Quark, and everybody knows it. I just think that's a really funny character trait to add onto this and just make that apparent in every single episode where she's like, bye you all, I love you, Rom. It's just like really funny. Anyways, okay. Now let's go to the next episode on the list. So this is the episode that I really loved.
Season 5, Episode 22, Children of Time. The Defiant crew becomes stranded on a planet surrounded by an energy barrier. They meet descendants of themselves, created after their ship crashed there over 200 years earlier. The crew now must decide whether to escape and erase this colony or sacrifice themselves to preserve its existence.
I loved this episode. This was such a surprise. This is one of those episodes that there were no spoilers for. So there was nothing where I was like, okay, I know this is going to happen. And when it started and we see, I forget what one of them was a Dax. The other one was maybe a descendant of O'Brien or something. I don't remember. But whatever, when they said their names, I was like, that's weird. And when they were like, we're your descendants, I was like, what the heck? And then when they told the story that like, yeah, 200 years, like you came to this planet today, But then when you try to leave this planet, you crash 200 years ago, and now this is us. There's a whole society here that's based off of the small away team that was on the Defiant, which is wild, right? And then we get to see this whole, like, how pieces of the different cultures and family systems and values were preserved and how they were morphed and merged. For example, Worf was the only Klingon who crashed. So there's some Klingon DNA in the mix of the society, but for the society, being Klingon is a choice. And the Klingons are like the hunters, and everybody else are like the gatherers. So they're all farmers, except for the Klingons. And the Klingons live away from the rest of the people. They live out in the forest, jungle. They live out in the woods, in the wilderness, and wear like bear skins or whatever kind of furry animals they have on this planet. And they choose to follow the way of the warrior. They choose to follow the principles of the Klingons. And I think that's just really cool how they've preserved that history in a way that makes sense in this context. Because it's not like there was 10 Klingons who crashed and they could actually perpetuate, it was Worf, and that was Worf teaching people, and then he eventually died, and then they kept teaching people and they kept teaching people. So that was passed down. And then I love that we have so many Trill, and like everybody has their cute little spots. And at one point, Cisco gets to see one of his descendants as this adorable little baby. And I don't know, it's just such a cool story. And then in the end, I really did not know what was going to happen, y'all. Like, I really didn't know, because I was like, okay, this whole time, I forget where Cisco stood on this, but this whole time, the conflict was, do we leave? Because basically the Dax that they meet in the beginning is like, oh, I figured out a way for you guys to leave, but also for a second Defiant to be created so that way we still exist, but you guys get to leave. But all that was bogus and all that was fake. He was just lying to them to get them to leave the exact way that they left before, to make sure that they crashed, to make sure that these people would still exist. So he was tricking them, but they discovered his trick within like the first 10 minutes of the episode. So now they have the decision. Do we keep working on some way to avoid this fate, to not crash, so that way we can go back to Deep Space Nine and go back to our lives? Or do we follow this path? We will be stranded on this planet for the rest of our lives, but this entire colony of however many people live there will still exist. And that's a really hard question, because there's no in between here. This is a choice. You will either try your hardest to get off this planet, or you will be stranded here. These are your options. And Kira also, something happened with her. She got zapped by something on the way in through the energy barrier, and she's going to die within a certain number of days if she doesn't get back to Deep Space Nine. So now they're on a clock. They added some stakes to it. So they all have to figure it out within like 3 days or whatever. They have to make a decision. And Kira's like, I want these people to live. I visited my grave. It's fine by me. But there's Odo, like the Odo that crashed there. So Odo 200 years from now, who finally confesses his undying love for Kira, and is just like, I don't want you to stay here. I want you to live. You're the most important thing in the world, and all these other things. So we've got all these different conflicting feelings about it. And I think it's a big, important issue. And this is my question for you also. If you were on the away team, what would you do? Would you stay or would you go? Would you go back to Deep Space Nine, or would you allow your ship to crash on this planet 200 years in the past? So let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to hear how you would approach this problem. But anyways, there's a lot of conflicting questions internally about what's right or wrong here, because if we go back to Deep Space Nine, everybody who lives here will not exist. Chief O'Brien is the only one from beginning to end who's like, I don't care. I have a wife. I have kids. I am not staying here. I don't care. I'm going back to my family. I don't care. I'm going back to my family. And there's a bunch of people in this colony who are named Molly, because that's like what was passed down from that was like kind of his contribution to the overall society. And they do say he was the last holdout. He was still trying to find a way to get off the planet. He was the last one to finally give in and get remarried and have kids and all that stuff. So it wasn't until the very end, when they were plowing and when the Klingons came over the hill to help them plant during the Great Harvest or whatever, help them plant, because they were like, even though there's not going to be, because at this point they know that everyone's going to go back to Deep Space Nine, and they're like, okay, so we will no longer exist after tomorrow, but we're going to still do our traditions, because this is what makes us us, and we're going to honor that, which I thought was really beautiful. So the Klingons come and they help, and everyone's planting, and it's at that moment when O'Brien is talking to one of the new little, one of the little Mollys, and he's just like, we can't do this. We can't make these people no longer exist. Like, that is so selfish of us to erase their entire existence. This is such a hard question. There's no good answer here. But he finally comes on board, and he's like, okay, Let's follow the plan that Dax laid out so that we will crash and be stranded here 200 years in the past, because these people have to exist. We can't just erase. I think it was 8,000 people in this colony or something like that. Let me know if I'm wrong in the chat, but I think it was 8,000. So anyways, they get in the Defiant. They're on their way. Everyone's like, oh, actually, so when O'Brien says this, they all look at each other. And they're like, yeah, we need to stay. So they all agree to stay. Everybody's on board with, we're going to make ourselves crash so that way these people can still exist. So they get on the Defiant. They're going through. They're following the plan. And then all of a sudden, things start going wonky. They get through the energy barrier and they don't crash. And the entire colony and everything they've ever created disappears. And they're like, what just happened? Who did that? And they're like, it must have been Dax. He must have felt really bad about, you know, crashing back 200 years ago. And, you know, they're trying to figure out who it was. Turns out it was Odo. It was future Odo, because he loved Kira too much to see her die a second time. But I don't know. At the end of this episode, I was just like, like, there's no good options here, but it was just really, I don't know. It got me in the feels. It really did. Okay, I would love to hear what you have to say. I'm going to check the comments. And if you're watching on your TV, you can hop on the app on your phone and jump in the comments. And then I'll go to the next episode on the list. Let's see. Yes, which is the better teacher, Keiko or Computer Quark? Yeah, I think that was really funny that Quark was like their AI to help the kids learn. I was like, why Quark of all things? And I still don't know the answer to that question. PS2 Chipper says, I did not like this episode. Why not? What didn't you like about this episode? Sela says, Children of Time was the best truly science fiction episode of the season. AF Kaplan says, all kinds of ethical dilemmas. DJ Magic says, I like these timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly episodes. Perfect science fiction, says Patty. PS2 Chipper says, they should have stuck them in a transporter buffer or something. You mean all 8,000 people? That's an interesting thought. I don't know how feasible that is, but to your point, was there some other option? Some way where the 8,000 people could have, like, let's pretend they could have been saved in the transporter buffer. Let's say they were all saved in the transporter buffer, so they all exist, and then they go through the energy barrier and they are happy and safe, and then now they have all these people saved in the buffer that they could put on another planet. That could work, except because of the time travel. You know, it's the whole causality thing. The only reason they exist is because the Defiant went back 200 years ago and crash landed and then propagated all these people. So it depends on your theory of time travel, which differs amongst different science fiction fandoms. Most fandoms have that kind of grandfather clause or grandfather paradox thing where it's like, if you go back in time and you mess anything up, then it messes the future of time. And if you don't, you know, like all of that's connected. But I do have a friend who his theory I actually like better. So let me compare it to Back to the Future. You know how in Back to the Future, when Marty goes back in time and he's like, if my parents don't kiss, I'll never be born. And he's got that picture of himself and he starts like disappearing in the picture. And then his hands start disappearing because him going back in time and his parents not getting together will keep him from being born. So now he doesn't exist to go back in time to make sure his parents get back together. Right. So my friend has this alternate way that he explained it, where he said another way to think of time travel, though, is branched timelines. Kind of like if you saw Loki, something like that, where when Marty McFly goes back in time, even if his parents don't get together, he would still exist. He would just exist in a timeline that he's no longer in, right? This timeline, like he still exists. He would still exist, but his whole like family background, whatever, would not exist in this timeline. So he would have no social security number. His fingerprints wouldn't be on record, you know, because he doesn't exist over here, but he's still alive. So if we had that thinking of time travel, I know we're getting time travel geeky now, but if we had that thinking, then yes, these 8,000 people could have been saved in the buffer or something and then still existed. But if we have option A, which most sci-fi goes with, then the only way for them to exist is for the Defiant to go back in time. That was an aside. Anyways, go back to Deep Space Nine because I would not want Kira to die. Oh, yeah, but Kira's whole thing was like one person versus 8,000, and she was willing to die. Sela says, I would definitely go back to Deep Space Nine. Nadia says, it may be selfish, but I would leave because I have a kid waiting for me. I am O'Brien. Yeah, and I think, and he even said that to somebody where he was like, it's different for you. I have kids. Like, you don't. and I'm married and you're not. Like, it's different. And I think that's true. I will say, being someone who is not married and does not have kids, I still have ties. It doesn't mean that I don't have ties to anything or anyone, that I don't care about anyone, that no one, matters to me. But I see his point of saying there are people who literally depend on me. And while, of course, Keiko would be fine and she could get remarried if she wants to, that's not the point. The point is he is the father and the husband in that family, and he would be choosing to stay away from them. So to this point of like, is it selfish? I don't know. Is it selfish to go back to your family, or is it selfish to leave your family behind for, I don't know. That's why this is such a good like episode and such a good question. Yeah, exactly. It's this Tuvix logic. Exactly. Where you're like, well, I could see both sides. Set a course for DS9. That other timeline shouldn't have existed. So no one's on team stay on the planet. Nobody's on team stay on the planet. Transporters can do magic within the episodes. So true. So true. Patty totally agrees with Nadia. Cough, transporters cough. Yep. Quark was in the episode so Armin Shimmerman could get his residual fees. That's funny. That probably is true, because I'm like, why is he the teacher? It was too much emotion and too short of an episode for me to develop feelings for any of them in that short of a time span. I think that's fair. I think for me, it was less me being emotional about them and more being having that Tuvix feeling, like somebody just said, having that like more inner conflict of, shoot, what would I do in this situation? That's where it got me emotionally. But you're right. There were no characters for you to really dig into other than maybe Odo, because future Odo is past Odo. Quark is fun. Don't walk, run. He did make that. Do you think that's why? But that thing that he made, that little commercial, wasn't that on Deep Space Nine? It wasn't on the Defiant. Yeah, I just don't know why they would have made Quark the teacher. I just think that's really, really funny and silly. Give them all the time, ban O'Brien, and he was, hold on. Oh, give them all the time that O'Brien had when he was jumping back and forward in time. That was a good episode. Was that this season? Nana Visitor's Baby? Was that this season or was that next season? Whatever season that was, I like that too. I like the episode where she had the baby. That was so funny. Where O'Brien and Shakar are like both competing over who gets to rub her feet or how to massage her properly, or like O'Brien wants to be there when the baby is born to like see the baby come out. And Shakar's like, I don't think you need to see that, because he doesn't want him looking at Kira's lady bits. And then O'Brien's like, I've seen this before, and then Shakar's like, you've seen this before. All of that was really, really funny. I think that was this episode or this season, but I don't remember. What would the impact have been on the Dominion War if he had stayed on the planet? Oh my gosh, you're right. The Dominion would have won, like they should have won in the first place, probably. The Dominions totally would have won if we didn't have Cisco. He was the ace in the hole because he was the connection to the Prophets. And maybe another question is, would the Prophets have come in and saved the day? I mean, we know they didn't, because the descendants were here for 200 years, but yeah. You're not cold-blooded. You're just showing that there's less of a conflict than I thought. Do you know who the baby's father is? Yeah, for Nana Visitor or for Kira? Because no, I don't know who Nana Visitor's baby was at all. Okay, here is the next episode on the list. And this is actually the first episode. This is the first one I saw while watching season 5 that I was like, oh my gosh, I love this.
Season 5, Episode 5, The Assignment. Keiko O'Brien comes back from a trip mysteriously possessed by some kind of non-corporeal alien. This entity forces Chief O'Brien to sabotage the station while threatening Keiko's life. O'Brien partners with Rom to foil the alien's plans and save his wife.
This episode was so good. I loved seeing evil Keiko. And this is what I'm talking about. So for any of you who've been here for a long time, you know that I was really irritated by that first Mirror Universe episode back in season 2, because they turned Kira into a mix of a dominatrix and a nymphomaniac. And I just felt like it was lazy to make the women like hypersexualized and to call that different and evil. It was just like, no, you just made her more, more addicted to sex. This is what I'm talking about. Like, here we get evil Keiko, and there's nothing about her that's hyper over sexualized. She's not dripping herself over chairs or bending over or doing any of this crazy stuff to show that she's a different person. She's just evil. Like, she's just evil. Like a regular person would be evil. And I just loved it. I was here for it. I love seeing Keiko be evil and be the bad guy, but also do it with a smile on her face. Like, she's still so sweet. And then when the Power Wraith, like, threw her over the railing, I was like, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming. I did not know that was going to happen. That totally shocked me in a terrible way. And how O'Brien was under so much pressure, and he's trying to sabotage the ship and trying to put together whatever this thing evil Keiko's telling him to build is, he's building. And then he keeps getting caught by all these different people, and he has to like sneak around it and be really suspicious. The whole thing was great. And the introduction of the Power Wraiths, which become such a thing, that was great. And then when he discovered what the Power Wraiths were, and it was like, what? There's like evil prophets who lived on Bashir, who were in the caves, and one of them snagged onto Keiko when she was in a cave. The whole thing, I was here for it. And then when Rom figured out, when Rom was helping O'Brien, and then he kind of figured out what O'Brien was doing, and then he figured out O'Brien really hadn't told, he really wasn't following secret orders from Starfleet, which is what he told Rom. And then when Rom figured out exactly what the thing was and what it was meant to do, and O'Brien was able to use that information to save Keiko, this was just like, Rom was a superstar in this episode. He was the hidden gem for this whole thing. And again, I'm here for it. This whole episode was perfection. It was perfection. It was amazing. And this was episode 5. So once I got to episode 5 and I saw this, I was like, this season, this is going to be a good season. This is going to be a good season. And it did not disappoint. Okay, so Nana Visitor married the guy who played Julian. I had no idea. I thought the guy who played Julian married the woman who played Dax. I knew 2 of them got married, but I didn't know which ones. So I thought it was those 2. I had no idea. I'm guessing they're not still married. Oh, how cute though. Yeah, spooky episode, so good. All right, let's go to the next episode on the list that I really loved.
Season 5, Episode 14, In Purgatory's Shadow. Garrick and Worf travel into the Gamma Quadrant after receiving a distress signal from Enabron Tain. They discover a Dominion prison camp holding Tain and many others, including the real Dr. Bashir and the real General Martok. Meanwhile, the Dominion fleet prepares to invade the Alpha Quadrant.
This one was good. We get to see G.I. Garrick. We get to see him doing some of his spy stuff where he's like, oh, there's nothing in this coded message. And then really there is something in the coded message. We find out that Enabron Tain is still alive. How? How is he possibly still alive? He was the only one on that burning ship that didn't die when Odo punched Garrick out and dragged him out. And we saw all of those ships just being shredded by the Dominion in that other episode, in the last episode where we saw Enabron Tain. So I'm like, how could he possibly be alive? And when Odo went to the Changeling homeworld to get turned into a solid as punishment or whatever, Garrick was going to bomb the entire planet because the Lady Changeling told him that there were no survivors, which clearly there were. So I'm assuming the Dominion told her there were survivors, but she just said there were none because she doesn't consider them worth even mentioning. That's what I'm guessing, more so than they kept it a secret from her. But anyways, so we had already heard that everybody had died, and Garrick was like losing his mind about that because Enabron Tain was amongst the numbers. But now we find out that he's still alive, and it's like, what the heck? And then we find out that that's really his dad, which I don't know if we find out in this episode or the next episode, but anyways, he's still alive. And I was like, what the heck? And then they have all these prisoners, and I'm like, what's going on? And then when they get captured by the Dominion and they get taken to the prison camp, or to the prison, and then we see Bashir. And I was like, what? Because we already saw Bashir back on Deep Space Nine. So then I was like, wait, is this the real Bashir or is that the real Bashir? Is this one a changeling? Is that one a changeling? I mean, I was like all discombobulated and turned around. Then we saw Martok and I was like, Martok's alive? Because I thought he was a goner too, because we saw changeling Martok at the beginning in the first episode of this season, I think. And so I don't know. It was just great. It was just twist after twist after turn. And we get to see more of the Jem'Hadar, and we get to, I mean, just the whole episode. I was like, what? It was great. Love it. 5 stars. I'm here for it. Yeah, I'm going to check the chat and then, no way. I'm going to check the chat and then we'll go to the next episode on the list, which is the next episode in the show. Yeah. So I also thought that Bashir was the exact same actor who plays Gaius in Battlestar Galactica. I absolutely thought that the whole time I was watching Battlestar Galactica. I was like, oh, look, it's the guy from Deep Space Nine. And my friends were like, that's totally a different guy. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's the same guy. And they were like, that's a different guy. And they showed me a picture of the two people side by side, and I could not tell them apart. So I now know they are two different people, and I still cannot tell them apart. If you put them next to each other, I can't tell you which one is Gaius and which one is Bashir. Talk about having a double. Yes, Rom was totally the hero. So Dax apparently married Leonard Nimoy's son. What are the odds of that? That is so random. Watching this episode, I was like, what? And loved it. Yep, same. The two actors would be in the same place with the photo, we're not the same. Yeah, we're not the same, guys. Exactly what I just said. Maybe the Inabrantain that was leading the assault on the Dominion homeworld was a changeling, right? I know, because freaking everybody's a changeling. We totally are. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, they look like twins. They look like I can tell they are different. Like seeing them side by side, I can tell they are different, but I can't tell you which one is which. Okay, so here's the next episode on the list that I really loved, which is the next episode.
Season 5, Episode 15, By Inferno's Light. The prisoners of the Dominion desperately try to escape without rousing suspicion. Worf fights battle after battle with the Jem'Hadar and holds his own. Garrick faces both his crippling fear of enclosed spaces and his perpetually disappointed father. Also, in a horrifying twist, Dukat forms an alliance with Dominion.
Okay, so this episode was also super good on its own. But that twist at the end when Dukat joins the Dominion, I was like, what the heck? Like, had I been watching this in real time, this had to be a sweeps month. This had to be the episode that happens before to see whether or not they get picked up for another season or something. It had to be. Because that little twist was so shocking. I was like, I have to know what happens next. I have to know what's going to happen next. I can't believe Dukat did this, but then I can believe Dukat did this. But weren't we just saying the Dominion were terrible? How are you going to bond with the Dominion? I mean, so many things, but that was like the last 2 seconds. The whole rest of the episode was also really awesome. So Worf is fighting, and he is fighting Jem'Hadar after Jem'Hadar after Jem'Hadar. And Martok is over there saying, buddy, you could just stay down. Because apparently when you get knocked to the ground, you can stay down and then the fight's over. Or if you get back up, you have to like hit this metal thing to say next round. And so Worf just refused to be KO'd. So every time he hit the ground, he would crawl over to the metal thing, climb up it, and then hit it so he could start fighting again. And Martok is over there like, hey, there's no shame in this. You fought really hard. You don't have to keep going. You've already fought like 10 dudes. Like you could just be done now. You could stop doing this. Because apparently this whole time since the Changeling captured and replaced Martok, Martok's been the one fighting, and that's why he only has one eye now, because he's been maimed in these battles. So he's speaking from experience, like, man, just stay alive. And Worf is like, no, bump that. We're fighting again. We're fighting again, because Worf is fighting on principle. He's fighting on rage and principle, and that is it. And even the Jem'Hadar, like the head, the leader person who keeps arranging all these fights, is just like, okay, this guy, I think he even said something like, Klingons are not, because I think at first he said we're looking for another Klingon to fight because we're looking for people to train our fighters in your style or whatever. But after a certain point, he was just like, this guy is not like the others. And the Vorta, who is in charge of this crew, is like, keep fighting. I don't even know. What's his function? Why is this guy even here? I don't know. But he's like, he has to keep fighting. And the Jem'Hadar is just like, there's no reason to keep fighting. Like we've fought this guy to his limits. And at one point the head Jem'Hadar is like, I'll fight him myself. Right. So he gets in the ring and he's like, we're going to show you how a real battle's done. So he's fighting, he knocks Worf down. Worf gets up. He keeps getting up. And then at one point, I think he's still on the ground, but he's like trying to make his way up and he's having a hard time. And the Vorta's like, kill him, finish him. And the Jem'Hadar is just like, no, your orders were to beat him in battle. And he said, I cannot beat him in battle. I can only kill him. But I can't actually defeat him because he won't give up. So I can't actually win, but I can kill him. And I just don't want to do that. So the Vorta's like, fine, if you won't kill him, then you have to die. And then shoots him. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is like terrible management. Somebody replace this Vorta. Because clearly the Jem'Hadar who's in charge understands battle tactics better than the Vorta. Because if you're fighting an enemy who won't give up, that's important information to know, you know? But the Vorta's just like, I just want blood, you know, or whatever his I don't know what his motives were. Anyways, this episode was great, beginning to end. It was great. The twist at the end, I was shocked. I could not believe Dukat joined the Dominion, and now Cardassia is part of the Dominion. And now I'm like, oh crap, Bajor better watch its back, because of course Cardassia is going to be coming back for Deep Space Nine. It's going to be coming back for Bajor, because that's what it's wanted ever since the wormhole opened. Okay, now that was my rant on this. I have one episode left, but I'm going to check the chat real quick. I cannot defeat him. I can only kill him. Those words ring true in my ears for the rest of my life. Yes, such a good line. Garrick's only weakness is enclosed spaces. That was a surprise too. That was another thing where they just added in, oh, by the way, he's claustrophobic. And it's something you would never know because he works on a space station. And it's sort of an enclosed space. Like, it's not a wide open space, but it's not a little closet. And then you find out that he's afraid of closets because his dad used to lock him in closets. You're just like, oh my gosh, like, Garrick's backstory is full of horror and tragedy and craziness. I know, poor Worf. But what I will say is it was so nice to see Worf winning battles, because he never won in TNG. He always got beat up. And so to see this scene, I felt like was so redemptive. It was just like, this is the Worf that I wanted to see in all of TNG, where battle after battle after battle, you cannot defeat him, because that's what he's always saying. You can't defeat a warrior and blah, blah, blah. But he was always getting defeated. So I loved this. Worf is not fighting out of rage. Worf is fighting out of honor. A rule of Dominion Fight Club is not to talk about Dominion Fight Club. That's hilarious. If Worf was fighting out of rage, the Vorta would have killed him earlier. Yeah, that's a fair point. This episode justifies Worf. Yes, yeah, 100%. 100%. I completely agree. It's like, this is why we're always talking about how Worf is such a hard-hitting warrior. This actually proves it. This one scene actually proves it. Funny. If Worf was fighting out of rage, Worf would have been killed by the Jem'Hadar. Yeah, and he wasn't, but the Jem'Hadar was killed, which I thought was very short-sighted of the Vorta. Okay, so here is my last episode on the list, which obviously has to go on the list.
Season 5, Episode 26, Call to Arms. With Dominion forces amassing in Cardassian space, Sisko decides to mine the wormhole to prevent further reinforcements. The Dominion retaliates by launching a full assault on Deep Space Nine. Sisko and most of the Starfleet crew are forced to evacuate. This marks the start of a full-scale war in the Alpha Quadrant.
Let me tell you something. The episode was good. But it was the scene where Sisko is like, all hands abandon ship or whatever. I was like, I did not see that coming. That was definitely a spoiler. And Nadia, you'll appreciate this being the spoiler police. That was a spoiler no one had given me. I was shocked. I could not believe it. I have not seen a captain abandon their station before permanently ever. You know, maybe like, unless it's about to blow up. If the ship's about to blow up, then yes, like abandon ship before it blows up. But I was shocked, could not believe it. And then when he mined the wormhole, so that way they can't pass through without blowing up, I was like, that's genius. And then when you see them just go like, chink, 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 that was so cool. And then when he left and Kira's like, we'll give them a little welcoming party or whatever. And she pushes the button and everything explodes inside the station and panels start flying off and steam is rising and everything just blows up. And they're like, yeah, we're going to leave the station in the same order that they left it for us. I don't know. That was just so shocking and also satisfying. And then I don't know how you felt about this, but when Jake stayed on the space station, I was very upset. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you on the station? You need to be with your dad. You need to be not in the literal center of conflict in this moment. Not that his dad was going anywhere better, because his dad's definitely going to war, but at least if he was on the Defiant, he could be transported to some other ships or something and sent back to Earth. But him staying on the station, I was like, what the heck? And then when Sisko finds out, they're like, do you want us to go back? And he's like, no, we can't go back for one man. Even if that one man is my son. He's old enough to make his decisions. Because at this point, I think Jake is, 18, 19 at this point? He's grown. He's grown at this point. So it's like, if that's what he wants to do, I have to honor his decisions. He's not a baby. I can't, I don't have to like swaddle him and carry him everywhere. He's grown, so I can't even control him if I wanted to. But that was very upsetting to me why he stayed. And then I think he was talking to Quark or somebody, and he was like, well, I'm Sisko's son, so I'll probably be fine. I was like, this logic is terrible, okay? You are the son of their greatest enemy. You are a bargaining chip. You are the perfect person to hold hostage or threaten or torture or all kinds of things because you're that guy's son. So you're in more danger than instead of less danger. Anyways, that's a nitpick thing. When Dukat comes swaggering onto the station and you just see like Damar and they're just like, yeah, you see Wayun rolling up and all the Jem'Hadar. Ugh, that scene makes me want to vomit. I'm so mad that Dukat got his way. I can't even deal. I'm so mad because he's been trying to worm his way back onto that station from episode 1, the second the wormhole opened. So, that just made my heart sick to see him win. And I also was wondering, like, how long is this going to last? I assumed that Sisko et al. Would retake the station by the next episode. I'm like, surely they'll be back the next episode. They're just going to, like, timey-wimey it and they'll be back. No, it was like several episodes before they came back. And so I looked at the little pictures, on Paramount Plus where it shows little pictures. And I was like, nope, still Dukat. I was like, how long does it take before? I need to know how long it's going to take before they get back on the station. I could not imagine having to watch this in real time. It would have driven me bonkers week after week and not knowing when, if ever, the Federation was going to retake Deep Space Nine. Man. That is a really good ending, really good season finale, really good episode. I was into it the whole time. I was so mad that Dukat won, and seeing Wayun's little face, like, it was so frustrating. And I don't know, it was great. This is a great episode. Well done, writers, actors, set deck, costumers. Well done. This is a great episode. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat. And then we're done for today. Be sure to join next week, though, where I'll be talking about my top 10 episodes from season 6 of Deep Space Nine. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you haven't taken advantage of the channel memberships that were gifted earlier by PS2 Chipper, maybe scroll back in the chat and see if you can grab one of those, if any of those are still left. Okay. Yes, the mining the wormhole was an awesome idea. I was proud of Jake. Were you proud of Jake? Why were you proud of Jake? I was angry with Jake because he has no skills as a fighter. He just has no place. He just has no place on Deep Space Nine. At least Quark has quirks. So there's a function for him being there that he doesn't need to leave. But I would love to hear your opinion. So why were you proud of Jake? Nadia says, OMG Jake, I would have beaten my child if he did that. You'd have to go back to the station to get him, though, because he'd be back at the station, and you'd be on your way to wherever the rendezvous point was. Jake staying was hard for me, but you'll find out. Oh, okay, I finished all of Deep Space Nine. so no spoiler alerts necessary at this point. I've totally finished the show, so we can talk about stuff that happens later, and it won't ruin it for me. Jake was so selfish. He put his father in an awful position and could have ruined his dad's career. Sisko is lucky that Starfleet still trusted him and didn't consider him compromised. Yeah, that's a good point. I would have probably considered him compromised because it's too easy. It's just too easy to kidnap us. It's just too easy to mess with his son and to manipulate him through his son. But I do love that Jake was like, because he went from being like, I'm a writer, like I'm a novelist, to I'm a journalist. I did love that. I love the functionality of that because being a writer was really cool, but being a journalist now gives him a role to play in the storyline. Now he can actually be a part of what's going on in the stories in a really hands-on way versus being like, well, all this terrible stuff's going on. Anyways, back to me writing my story, So I did like that pivot where he's like, I am an author, but I'm also a journalist because I love writing. I think that was really cool. But then he comes to find out that none of the things he's writing will be published because the Dominion are not allowing it. So it's kind of a way. So it kind of turned into more like a journal than a newspaper or whatever. But I did like that they gave him a function because had he gone with Sisko or had he gone back to Earth, we wouldn't have seen him in any more episodes. Because why? Why would he be there? He's not going to be in the war room. He's not going to be hanging out in the promenade if he's not on the station. So I think it was a smart way to give his character a reason to be in the show. I love the symbolism of the baseball remaining on Sisko's desk. Yes. Same. That was one of those moments where you're just like, ugh, that was so juicy, right? Ducat walks in and everything's a mess. Everything's a shambles. The baseball's sitting right there. And Ducat's like, huh, this is a message from Sisko. And Wayun's like, what is it? Or maybe it was Damar. Whoever else was in the room was like, what's the message? And he's like, he'll be back. Oh, so good. And he was back. And he did come back for that baseball. Ducat is a real son of a gun. Could not have said it better myself. Oh, bummer. Nobody got the memberships. Oh, what a bummer. Maybe they're timed and you have to like catch them while they're there. Oh, well, now we know. Now we know for future. I don't care if I would have to go back to the station to get him. I can hold a grudge. Staying back on Deep Space Nine to document the war was a man's decision. I think documenting the war is a great way to keep Jake in the storylines. I think it would have been cool to see that document somehow or to reference it somewhere. Even if it was like a flashbacky episode or something like that. I think that could have been really cool. Is this your favorite season? Season 5. No, season 5 is not my favorite season. I think season 7 is my favorite. Season 7, yeah, I think my favorites go in reverse order from the last season to the first. I think those are my favorites. I think it goes 7, 6, 5, 4. Like, I think that's exactly how it goes. Because when I was thinking about my top 10 favorite episodes, I already had 10 for season 7, like off the bat. And then I had, I think I had like 8 or 9 for season 6, just when I was just writing episodes I loved before I decided to do the top 10. And then I only had 5 for season 5. So, Jake was trying to be Sisko's man in the chair. He knows more of the ins and outs of Deep Space Nine than you think. All that time sneaking around with Nog. That's true. That's true. Make sure you enable the ability to accept memberships if you haven't. Oh, people need to enable that ability. Dang it. Well, okay. Now we know that for next time too. I didn't know that. Okay. Many people think it fell off in 7. I'm glad you hear that. Yeah, no, there were so many episodes in 7 where I was like, what? Like, what just happened? And I think for me, and this is it. Now I'm just rambling. So there's no more episodes on the list until next week when we go over my favorites for season 6 of Deep Space Nine. But one of the benefits of me watching this show for the very first time now, as opposed to when it aired, is that I don't have any of the baggage of having talked through my thoughts with other fans. So I don't have years and years of people talking about this is the best episode, the worst episode, the best season, the worst season, the best character, the worst character. I don't have any of that baggage. I have all of that baggage with TNG. I have all of that baggage with Voyager. Years and years of things that I've read or heard or talked to friends about or whatever that have colored my perception of the show that were different from how it was when I was first watching the show. Like when I first watched Tuvix, for example, we talked about that earlier. I remember just hating Tuvix and being like, I want Tuvok and Neelix back. Like, I want the characters I know and love. And I remember just being so passionate about that. When I rewatched that episode as an adult, I was like, actually, I like Tuvix a lot better than either Tuvok or Neelix. I was like, I actually like this person way better. And I kind of want to keep him. But I didn't have that perspective back then. And over the years, I've talked to people that have like reinforced that idea. All that to say is that's the beauty of me watching this now without any outside influence, because I can say, Rom is really irritating until season 4. And now I love him all the way through. Or, you know, I love Nog. What a great character. I've been saying that since the first episode. And I still love Nog. It hasn't changed. The whole show's over. Still love Nog. That did not change. Without having anybody else saying like, oh yes, everybody agrees Nog is the best character. Everybody agrees so-and-so is the worst character. Like, for example, one of the spoilers that was dropped here previous, not in a DS9 live stream, but just a, TNG live stream or something, is people were talking a lot about how much they hate Ezri. So I was under the impression that Ezri was like a bad person. I was like, oh, maybe she betrays somebody, or she does something really shady, or she's like secretly evil. And at the time, I didn't know that Ezri Dax was the symbiote from Jadzia, because, I hadn't watched Deep Space Nine. So I knew that at some point Jadzia died. I knew that Ezri came on, but I didn't know any of the context. And I knew that everybody, like a lot of people were like, oh, I hate Ezri. So I was waiting when I was watching the show to see why do people say this? Why does more than one person say they don't like Ezri? And as I'm watching, I'm just like, I think it's just because she replaced Jadzia. There's nothing wrong with this character. She's not evil. She didn't betray anybody. She didn't do anything to be disliked. In fact, the writers went out of their way to try to create her to be a very likable character. They made almost every episode in season 7 about Ezri because they really wanted us to like her. They're like, she's new, like her. They made her young and unsure instead of older and more confident. Because if she was more confident, but replacing Jadzia, who was also confident, people would have read that as cocky. But because she was really unsure and young, it makes you feel more like motherly or mentory towards her and less judgy. So that's just one example where I'm like, oh, people were hating on Ezri just because she replaced Jadzia and they just didn't want Jadzia replaced, just like I was hating on Tuvix because I didn't want Tuvok and Neelix replaced, But the character herself was fine. She was totally fine. I didn't love that almost every episode in season 7 was about Ezri. That was kind of annoying, but there were some really freaking amazing episodes in season 7, like so good, and some really, really, really great episodes in season 6. So good. So yeah, that's a long rant about my feelings in general about watching this show so far after everybody else, is that I have opinions that are blank slates, that no one else has shared what I should think or should feel. I will say something that surprised me was my feelings of Dukat changed. In the beginning, I didn't like Dukat because I just thought he's just kind of a racist jerk, right? And I for those of you who were there, Kai Wynn, before she was Vedic Wynn, ooh, she got on my nerves. She just got under my skin. Like, I couldn't stand her because she was saying everything was for the good of Bashir, but it was really for the good of herself. And I think that character, she was so well written because she just drove me crazy. But I felt Dukat was pretty one note, as were all the Cardassians. They were all like, down with Bashir, up with Cardassia. It was like the same thing over and over. That has totally changed. The character of Dukat was just like, whew, like they went in a totally different, like way more robust direction with that character. I'm not just talking about the power rate stuff, but the way that this character got so obsessed with people just loving him and appreciating him and valuing him, the way he just was so obsessed with that every time you see him, and you just see him like getting more and more unhinged. Like, all of that was fascinating. And now I hate Dukat with like the most passionate hate, maybe slightly more than Kai Wynn. Like, if I hate Kai Wynn at a 9, I hate Dukat at like a 10 or 11, so that was surprising because I didn't hate Dukat that much in the beginning because he didn't do that much that way. He just was kind of like, he was unlikable, but he didn't really do anything other than be unlikable. But man, I don't remember which season it starts picking up. Maybe it's this one, maybe it's 5. But he just starts getting more and more and more evil. And like, the more I see him, the more I just want to like tear him to little pieces. He's definitely a punchable face for sure. And so is Wei Yun. Man, that is a good character. Okay, let me check the chat. I'm just still a rambling. Okay, so Jake, enable season 7. Okay. Yeah, season 7 was wrapping up the show, which is such a hard time to have a new character in your last season when you know it's the last season. That's hard also. And I have a feeling, I don't know. I have a feeling they had to really, because Jadzia left at the end of the last season, so they did have some time to prepare and think about what they wanted to do differently. But I have a feeling that they already had a plan for season 7 and what was going to go on with the Dominion War. But now you've got this new character that you got to introduce, and you got to make people like her really, really fast, but also keep going with the Dominion War stuff. And I don't think that blended super well. I think it just became the Ezri show and Dominion War. That's what it kind of felt like. I really dislike the Dax change in season 7. Me too. Yeah, the Dax change hurts even worse with the behind the scenes crap. Yep. I can't believe Morn ripped Dukat in half in the finale. Crazy. I hate to say it. Ezri had a lazy eye. Did she? I didn't notice. I totally didn't know. I did notice her lisp, but I didn't notice a lazy eye. I don't think they need to replace Jadzia. They could have just killed her off and used her death as further motives. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's really interesting. What do you guys think about that? If they killed Jadzia and then just didn't replace her with any Trill, they just like had one less cast member. I think the show would have been fine that way, because then we wouldn't need all this backstory about who is Ezri and, why should we like Ezri, and Ezri, why is Ezri weird around Worf? I think that would have alleviated a lot of the issues that people had with that character, which is just not introduce her and leave Jadzia dead. I also think people would have rebelled in the streets if there wasn't like closure as to what happened to the little Dax symbiote. And I think it would have made, I don't know if, you tell me, would you have hated the show more or loved the show more if they would have just left Jadzia dead and no more Dax? I think that would have added such a weightiness to season 7, because then those first few episodes would have just been episodes of grieving. It would have just been episodes of people being like, how can I live without Dax? You know, of Worf grieving, of Cisco grieving, which it was. We did see both of them grieve, but it would have been, we would probably needed more of that without the Ezri replacement. I think the show would have been, I think that would have been really intense. And I think it would have been so memorable. No one would have ever forgotten it. They would have been like, like for me, I hate that they killed Data in Nemesis, and I'm still mad about it to this day. So I feel like it would have been like that. Although people probably are still mad that Jadzia died, but had they left her dead, like no Dax at all, I think it would have been one of those things where it's like, I will never forgive you, Deep Space Nine. How could you do that? I don't know. I think it would have been fine without Ezri, but she's okay. I do like her. They had enough well-known actors. Yeah, I don't know. I think the show would have been just more heavy and serious, I think, without that replacement, because it would have been like death is permanent, which is not really a thing in sci-fi. Usually you can come back as a ghost or in a dream or something. But I do think the show, it fits with the type of story they were telling for someone to die and not come back. My fan idea was to not have Ezri join the cast and to have Troy. Wait, what? The show as a recurring character and come to console a good friend Worf and maybe stay on for a few episodes to help them. Oh, having Troy come on and join the crew. Oh, that's interesting. And help everyone who's been traumatized. Oh, that would be super interesting. And in wartime. You know, I think that would have placated more people if you had Troy come on for the first 3-4 episodes, maybe 3 episodes, just to kind of be helping people grieve or whatever, and then she leaves. Because then, though people would have been pissed that there was no Jadzia, people would have been like a little bit like, well, at least there's Troy. You know what I mean? And I feel like Ezri just really got the actress who plays Ezri just really got the short end of the stick. She came in at the end when the show was already wrapping up, when everyone was established. They killed this beloved character that she's pretty much replacing with a less capable character. And I feel like she probably got a lot of hate. I mean, I don't know. I haven't researched any of this, but I feel like she probably got a lot of hate for that role. And sometimes it's like that, you know? Better to have a job and be hated in your role, though, as an actress than to not have a job at all, I guess. Okay, that does it for me. Thank you so much for coming, everyone who came live. Thank you to everyone who came on the replay. And I want to see you next week, same time, same place, where I will be talking about the top 10 favorite episodes from season 6 of Deep Space Nine. Yeah, you're probably, Marina Sirtis didn't want to put up with all the behind the scenes stuff. Who knows? Who knows whatever goes on with all that stuff. Thank you so much for coming. I'll see you next time.